So let's talk about how we can reduce the achievement gap between boys and girls. I'm going to say 3 things that will help your boys in your classroom. Okay, number 1 is competition. Now, I remember when I was in teachers training and there was a book going around about how to have games where no one loses. And I really am not in favor of this. You can do it if you like. It's probably not going to have a lasting negative impact, but generally speaking, competition is good. Winners and losers is good. Do you have to do it in every class? Do you have to do it all the time? Does everything have to be a competition? No, but there is a time and a place for a bit of competition. Boys love it. Second way is have very specific outcomes, very specific goals, right? Written down, and I remember as a kid, the only thing that could really shut me up and get me to work as a 13 and 14-year-old, when a teacher just gave us a worksheet, which was a whole bunch of questions that we had to answer, and there was the textbook. Now, is that the best way to teach and learn? No, but it's not the worst, right? It got me reading, it got me writing. Reading and writing, okay? 2 pretty important things to be doing on a daily basis. So there's something there, right? And if you've watched my other videos, 3 levels of learning outcomes. First starts with the very basic what is, right? We have to understand that basic factual knowledge. So have those really clear and explicit in the start of your lesson, and then those outcomes should progress in difficulty. And so if you watch my Trav's Triad, my 3 levels of learning outcomes, my other videos on this, you'll see how I do it in every lesson. I have 3 levels of learning outcomes, so all my students know where to begin, and they all should be able to acquire that knowledge, and where they need to progress. So competition, clear outcomes, and third, actually just giving boys a physical, having a clear worksheet and spaces and boxes and lines to write on, like very clear frameworks on what to do, making things very specific and tangible is really important, and it can really help boys. Now, you might have hopefully been listening as I'm talking about this going, yeah, but that would help girls too. That's just good teaching. Aren't you just stereotyping all boys here? Yes, I am. And that is the problem when we talk about achievement gaps. I'm not really a big fan at all of reducing achievement gaps in education. It sounds nice and it sounds weird to say that I'm not interested in reducing the achievement gap between boys and girls. Because when I walk through that thought experiment, a few things happen. Number 1, I start stereotyping based on gender, based on race, based on socioeconomic status, based on parental marital status. I don't like stereotyping my students. I just want to be the best teacher I can for all of my students. The other thing with reducing achievement gaps is if I'm trying to raise the achievement of the boys, what am I doing with the girls? Am I not trying to raise their achievement as well? So if I'm trying to reduce the achievement gap, well then the best way to do that would be to stop the girls from developing and learning and only help the boys. I would never do that, and no teacher should ever do that. Imagine if you were the parent of a girl in your class, right? I will relate it to my own kids. If I had a daughter I have a daughter, right? Girls do better in literacy and they do better in English studies. If I had a teacher saying, we're not gonna give your girl extra help and guidance because we're just trying to reduce the achievement gap and trying to raise the achievement of boys, right? Now, my girl is bilingual, so she does need extra support, and she will need, when she gets older, extra support, I'm sure, with her language, because she's speaking Japanese and English, but it's because she's a girl. Yeah, but she's a bilingual girl and her English isn't as strong as other native English speakers. So there we see that another innate problem of trying to reduce achievement gaps is because what gaps are we talking about? What groups are we talking about? Are we talking about gender? Are we talking about race? Are we talking about literacy levels? How do we want to group our students to then reduce the gaps? So my daughter is just one simple example there of where that dichotomy of thinking of groups of students just completely fails. So I would far rather that they just treated her on her individual needs. And ironically, that's kind of where a lot of this reduce the achievement gap stuff comes from, is from people saying we need to individualize our content and have an individualized teaching strategy while still trying to reduce the gaps between groups of students. So we're still going to treat them as groups of students when it comes to measuring their outcomes. But we measure outcomes so we can provide better and differentiated instruction. It doesn't really make any sense. Now, I know this is possibly an unpopular opinion, but it's pretty logical and rational, right? I'm okay saying it. Another way we could, let's say I give you these 3 strategies, right? Competition, outcomes, frameworks for boys. Now you implement that in your class, or the school says, all right, we're going to have these 3 things. Now what happens if that also raises the achievement of girls? What happens if that has a deeper effect on girls? Girls' achievement goes up 10%, boys only 5%. Well, that intervention has exacerbated the achievement gap. So therefore you would say that intervention failed, but yet it raised the achievement of all students. Surely that is the goal of education. I really don't like this focus on achievement gaps. I understand where it comes from. I understand that it comes from a good place, and I understand that it's framed in the wrong way. It's not about reducing achievement gaps. It's about raising the achievement of all students, regardless of the groups they belong to. That is my fundamental mission as a teacher. Disagree with it if you like, but that's what I'm going to do. But hey, boys, we just got to focus and help them out, right? Anyway, I use those three things, you know, as a leading point into my little rant about achievement gap, right? Competition, frameworks, and outcomes. Because you can see, I hope, they are things that help boys, but they are things, if you do in your class, will help all students, and that is the goal. All right, thanks.